Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID, number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me, as always, Philadelphia's number one hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. How we doing today, Charlie?
Doing good. I have a question for you, Bill.
Okay.
Now that our show is pretty much every day for the rest of the summer going to be at 1 p.m., do we have to change it from evening?
Oh, that's right. It's 1
Because
now.
I feel like at 3 you could get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if 1, or do we just keep up the bit?
I think most people watch afterwards.
Okay. Maybe.
That's my way to never. That's my excuse, so I never have to change any of my.
I don't
robotic.
want to mess with your rhythm, and I feel like the bit might require you to keep saying fun and games for the evening. But like at 3 p.m. it was much easier to get away with it. Because we're coming up on the evening. It's basically borderline. 1 p.m. it's very much the afternoon.
Now like it's summer, like the day goes until about 9.
Exactly.
So yeah, we might have to change it.
All right. I'll leave that up to you as the director of fun and games.
Do we go afternoon?
Whatever you're feeling.
All right.
I just wanted to bring up that possibility.
We'll figure it out. Well, it is. It's not Danny night. It's Danny Day.
Danny Day.
So today I decided. It was March 10th, 2023 that Chuck Fletcher was relieved of his duties. So it's been well over a year.
I feel like he wasn't the only person relieved after that.
It's been well over a year.
A lot of fans were very relieved.
I think relief is one way to put it. Overjoyed, whatever it might be. Well over a year since Danny was named interim GM. And then, of course, it was like a month later. I think it was like April 11th. He was actually named. Maybe May?
No, it was May.
Yeah,
because
it was May.
They announced that he had the interim tag removed the same time they announced that Jonesy was going to be president.
Okay.
Because they had that big unveiling in early May where Hilferty was there. So, yeah, it was early May. But I feel like by the end of the regular season, it was abundantly clear, both by the way that Bri're was talking and the reports that we've been getting. I had reported it a few times. The National Insiders had reported it. It seemed pretty clear that Danny was going to be the GM.
Unless Danny walked up to John Tortorella and Dan Hilferty and punched them both, it seemed like he was always going to be the GM.
Bill, I have a feeling if he walked up to John Tortorella and punched him, Torts would be in love with him.
He might have been named president. We might have never got Jonesy.
Hilferty probably not. Torts would be like, this guy's the greatest dude ever.
But it's been over a year since Danny was effectively named the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers. And I think for the most part, we have this general positivity.
Not everybody. I mean, I see people on social media who are already fairly negative about Danny, but I think on this show, we are decently positive.
I would say the majority is
skeptically positive.
Yeah, either, listen, it's the Flyers. Like we say every day, anything could go wrong at any time.
Of course.
He could trade Jamie Drysdale for me tomorrow. Who's to say?
Hey, you
think
you played defense in high school.
Yeah. There's a general, all right, he's at least, jury is still out, or for the most part, I like the job he's done. There's always going to be skeptics.
Of course.
If he drafted the next Eric Lindros, it would be but
that contract he gave to that fourth liner, that was a $1 million overpay.
He paid too much for Nick Seeler, so we got McDavid for that guy, but don't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's all about value.
I think for the most part, but after 13 months of him being the GM, where are you right now in the tenure of Danny Briere?
I think where I'm at with Danny is I am, generally speaking, optimistic that the Flyers have an above-average general manager. Now, that doesn't mean I think that he's been perfect. The things I've liked the most about him, I would say, the two things I've liked the most about him. Number one, I thought he did, and this is a big deal for a GM, I thought he did a great job at the draft last year. And not just in terms of getting Michkov, which was a slam dunk, but I would hope that if he falls in your lap, you're a GM, you take him. That said, there were other GMs who didn't, so whatever. But it went beyond Michkov. I really liked the philosophy he had going into the draft, taking swings on guys like Denver Barkey and Alex Chernick. Even some guys deeper in the draft. what I'm looking for in a draft is if I agree with the overarching philosophy, the overarching thought process. And I feel like Briere in his first draft did go into it with the philosophy of, I want to add skill, I want to take big swings. I might not necessarily agree with every player a GM takes, but if I agree with the overarching philosophy, I'm going to give him a lot more rope to make picks that, might not be one I'm in 100% agreement with. But if I like where his head's at, I'm generally speaking going to cut him some slack. I liked where Briere's head was out in the draft. The second thing I like about him, and granted, he might be being graded in my head on a little bit of a curve because of the GMs before. Yeah. I like the creativity. I like the fact that he seems to not just throw up his hands and say,
trades are hard.
Nobody offered me anything for JVR, so I guess we couldn't trade him. Instead, he is, finding a way to get a first-round pick for Ivan Provorov, finding a way to get a first-round pick for Sean Walker, inserting himself as the middleman to get an extra mid to late round pick at the trade deadline. Just things that it didn't seem like Chuck Fletcher, and to a lesser degree Ron Hextall, it didn't seem like they could do that, or at least were of the mindset that they even thought to do that, especially Chuck. I like that Briere seems like he has the mental flexibility and the creativity that he's not just going to say, well, nobody offered me a first-round pick, so I guess I just got to trade him for the best offer. He seems like he thinks outside the box, and I like that tendency of his.
Yeah, that's like just going back. It seems to me, in retrospect at least, Ron Hextall was like, yeah, there's nothing I can do till all these contracts expire. So, right now, we'd be turning, okay, now we can start.
I thought the one trade Hextall did that it showed that creativity. I mean, it's like the Ronaldo trade was great, but somebody had to make that offer. You don't hang up if someone's offering a third-round pick for Zach friggin' Ronaldo.
Awesome.
I thought the Vinny LeCavalier trade was creative.
That was a good one.
And you get Jordan Wheel back in that deal, who at the time,
killing it in the KHL.
For a couple years, it looked like he might have been a piece, and you got him for a guy who was, quite frankly, cooked in a deal like that. So Hextall at times showed creativity. Chuck really didn't. And the few times where he did make some big swing trades that, at the time looked good. I'm thinking about the Ryan Ellis trade. Obviously, it ends up blowing up in his face. It seems like Danny has a more creative streak, which I think is going to be necessary if this team is going to execute this rebuild correctly.
Yeah, it's obviously jury is still out. It's been 1 year. He's done well subtracting. I like the draft, at least from what we've seen so far. Like you said, that philosophy of both need and calculated risk. Okay, we know the Carter Hart black cloud is looming. Ivan Fedotov at the time was like, all right, this seems like maybe a lost cause. Right. Felix Sandstrom coming up on the last year of his deal, and he hasn't exactly really shown us any reason. Yeah, we're going to extend him. He's our backup of the future. So, yeah, we're going to draft 2 goalies. And then you see the swings on Barkey and Ciernik, and it looks like, yeah, okay, looks like this might work out. I do appreciate the philosophy there. The Provorov trade, he got what he needed to get. The Walker trade, which is really an extension of the Provorov thing.
Sure is.
But I like where we're going. I don't know about all the contracts, and also these are not big deal. He hasn't handed anyone 8 years, $100 million.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is probably Tippett.
It's Tippett, and when you look at the number and you look at his production, a few years ago with a lower cap, JVR got 7 times 5.
Yeah.
8 times 6 is 6.2. Don't look too bad. Yeah. But so what we're going to do today, you know what? It's the off season. We have the time.
Yeah.
Let's just go through every move. Let's go through every move Danny has made.
Let's do it.
And then see if we are where we think we are with Danny Briere, 45 minutes from now. Mm-hmm. But before we do that, I got to tell you about our partners over at Rite Aid. Listen, it's that time of year. Birds are chirping. Grass is growing. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. That means eyes are watered and throats are scratchy. Everyone out there who's been listening to the show over the last few weeks and months knows I'm an allergy sufferer. You can hear it in my voice on plenty of days. Pollen from trees, grasses, and weeds are a primary cause of seasonal allergies. And symptoms flare when pollen you are allergic to is in the air. It's possible to be allergic to just one or several types of pollen. And let me tell you, man, from firsthand knowledge, it sucks, but there are steps you can help take to alleviate some of your allergy symptoms. First and foremost, sign up for Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards and to receive email on pollen alerts for your area. And if the pollen count is high, try to stay indoors and keep windows closed and run air conditioners as needed. Remove shoes and coats near your door to minimize tracking pollen inside your home. And take a shower before bedtime to help wash away pollen from your skin and hair. And of course, visit Rite Aid to stock up on over-the-counter allergy solutions like a nasal rinse or antihistamines. Still not enough relief? Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist if a different type of allergy medication, like a decongestant, might be necessary. You can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on ways to get relief during allergy season. Visit your local Rite Aid today, stock up on allergy relief, or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com. All right, the way I want to do this is to go by each group of move. We're going to start with trades.
Okay.
I think trades are the best way to start here.
With trades.
And I got to shout out FlyersHistory.com for making this so easy.
It's a great website.
I have no idea who runs FlyersHistory.com.
I could find out. Like,
this seems like something we could do.
The one person who I'm sure either he runs it or he's really good friends with whoever runs it is Bill Meltzer. I could ask Bill. There's no way that Bill doesn't know exactly who does that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it would be up to date when you go there, but it absolutely is.
It's straight out of the late 90s. Like, it's got that same look, but like it's always updated.
I very much appreciate the look of it. It's very like early internet.
Yeah, we're going back to like GeoCities shit.
Exactly. But FlyersHistory.com, you want to find any of this. So like I said, Chuck Fletcher relieved of his duties March 10th, 2023. Danny takes over on 3/11 day, and the first trade he makes is not till June 6th. Worked the 3-team trade with Columbus and LA and the LA Kings. He sends out Ivan Provorov, Kevin Connaughton, and Hayden Hodgson. Couple names from the not too recent.
Hayden Hodgson.
Yeah, remember those? Man. Oh man, like this was a year ago, and it's like, it's
wild.
My god,
it's wild that Hayden Hodgson was still in the Flyers organization this time last year.
Last year, yes. And he gets back the 2023 first rounder. He eventually uses on Oliver Bonk, a 2024 conditional second rounder. We will see if that gets used this year or next year. Columbus has till after the first round to let the Flyers know.
It's such a weird condition.
And I just got to believe, considering Columbus is like one of the worst teams in the league, they don't plan on being this bad next year. It's basically a first-round pick that you're like, yeah, we're going to give that to you in 2025, but we'll see.
And generally speaking,
teams put it off.
GMs put it off.
Yeah,
like that's generally the philosophy.
Yeah, but Yarmo is gone, so it's like
you never know.
It could be the brand new, whatever. That second rounder either this year or next year, and then they get the contract of Cal Peterson, they get Sean Walker, and they get Helge. Is it Helge Grans?
Helge, I believe. Helge Grans.
Sean Walker, obviously, we'll get to that one. But just looking back at the Ivan Provorov trade, our first look at what Danny Briere was looking to accomplish last summer, and our first look at how he was going to go about it. Makes it a 3-team deal. No one was going to take Ivan Provorov coming off the year he had, knowing that the Flyers had to move on from him at the salary he was signed to. So, and you don't really want to take up a retention slot for that amount of time. Flip him to LA. LA retains, and then they flip him to Columbus. You get the first-round pick. You get Sean Walker. Seems like this was pretty much a win for the Flyers.
I think this was a trade that, in the moment, I thought was a good trade for the Flyers. In retrospect, knowing what they were able to get out of Sean Walker, both on the ice and then in the trade that they later made at the deadline this past March. Yes. Deadline was in March. Now it's a slam dunk. I mean, this is a fantastic trade by Danny Briere. Number one, just from a value standpoint, like Ivan Provorov was just Ivan Provorov again this year. He's just a guy who is probably miscast as a first pair defenseman. He's a nice second pair defenseman, number 2, number 3, somewhere in that range. The Flyers got a first round pick back for him, and they got back another guy in Sean Walker who brought them back another first round pick. And you get the conditional second. Like, you got
2 firsts and probably a pretty high second.
Yes, this supercharged the asset accumulation part of the rebuild. The other thing that I like about this deal a lot And this is something that, again, we're going back to the Chuck Fletcher tenure. I had been reporting for the better part of 2 years that Ivan Provorov was a problem in that room, that he was an issue with accountability because Provorov refused to acknowledge that he ever made any mistakes. It was always someone else's fault. And because of that, he was not well liked by his teammates. This was even long before the Pride Night stuff. This was something that dates back multiple seasons where Provorov would go into meetings and basically say, like, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you did that wrong.
And then fold his arms.
Which fair. Like, I am all for player-to-player accountability.
We just played that clip the other day of Eric Lacroix out at DNVR saying, like, this is how good teams operate.
Yeah.
You tell each other.
Exactly. So all for Ivan Provorov telling his teammates when they screwed up. The problem was, if you're going to do that, you have to own it when you screw up. And what Provorov's problem was that whenever he made an obvious mistake, and we watched those games, he made a lot of obvious mistakes. It would always...
Every time the puck came back to the point, for instance?
There you go. It would always be, well, my partner wasn't in the right position. Well, the style of play, like, I wanted to go and everybody else was hanging back because of what we do in the neutral zone. And his teammates were pretty much like, what the hell, dude? Like, we're fine dealing with you calling us out, but you got to take it when it's clearly your fault. And he rarely did. This was a problem that was an issue. And this kind of creates an accountability problem in the room because if one of your leaders, like he had an A, one of your leaders has never taken accountability, it filters down. Then you obviously have the Pride Night thing where whatever your opinions are, I think we've made our opinions very clear.
Obviously, you know what we think about that, but regardless of that,
exactly,
it is Scott Lawton's thing.
Yep.
And there ain't a dude more beloved in that locker room than Scott Lawton.
Exactly.
It's why he's still here.
Exactly.
And you went, fuck you, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and at that point, Ivan Provorov, like his presence in that room was untenable. He was very, very widely disliked. Danny Briere pulled the trigger on a move that you could say he had to do it, but you could have said a year ago that Chuck Fletcher had to do it, and he didn't do it because he was too scared to see what the defense would look like without Ivan Provorov taking 24, 25, 26 minutes a night.
The answer?
As it turned out, a lot better. Because Travis Sanheim actually could take those minutes if you gave them to him.
And to be fair, you did have an effective second pair for the first time in forever because of this trade.
Because of that trade. Because Sean Walker, who, like, do I think the Flyers knew that they were going to be getting that good version? Like, Sean Walker at that level? No. But I do think that there was an element of they had their scouts look at him, and Danny probably knew a bit about him. You know, Jonesy talked to the guys in L.A., the people he knew. Rob Blake, I'm sure Jonesy's friends with him because Jonesy's buddies with everybody. And the organization was like, we think we can get something out of this guy. Like, maybe not. We're taking a bit of a flyer, but we think that there's something more in Sean Walker. And they were right. Did they think they were going to get this good of a Sean Walker? Probably not. But you got to give them credit for identifying a guy who they viewed as potentially undervalued, taking him on as what was functionally a cap dump, and then flipping him into a first-round pick, which we'll get into later. I think on multiple levels, this deal was a home run. At the time, it looked good. Now it looks great. And if there's a feather in Danny's cap, aside from drafting Matvei Michkov, it's probably this trade. This is a brilliant trade.
This is the one you look at and go, congrats, dude. You nailed it. Like, this was I don't know if the feeling of Danny Briere, like, other than maybe the Sean Walker trade, 12 months or 10 months later, like, if there's been, we're high on him. Like, this was the moment. It was, hell yeah, man. We got rid of Provorov, who we needed to and wanted to get rid of, and we got a bunch of stuff back that ended up being pretty valuable. Then you go a couple of weeks. You go to June 27th. So, like, 2-3 weeks later.
I was sitting in a hotel in Nashville.
Yeah. And they send Kevin Hayes with the retained salary to St. Louis for a conditional, that says second rounder. That is not true.
Definitely not a second rounder.
It was like a 6th or a 7th. I miswrote that one. And
no, it was for a 6th round pick.
6th rounder.
It was for a 6th round pick.
Yes.
2024. So they will be using the Kevin Hayes pick this draft.
Maybe. And
maybe
so they
sent
sent Kevin Hayes in a dump to St. Louis. And obviously the thing you always think about this one is, listen, one, again, had to trade him. it was an untenable situation with John Tortorella.
Right.
John Tortorella said a couple of months ago, Kevin and I just could not agree on the way he needed to play hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was in a different context, but he didn't like the way Kevin played. Kevin didn't really give a shit about the way the coach wanted him to play. So we had a parting of the ways. Kevin Hayes goes to St. Louis. Fine. You moved on from him. You cover a bunch of his salary. That's something you're going to be paying for the foreseeable future, but it is what it is. This was the first, Danny, does he have the experience? Because the much bigger trade rumor got leaked. And the much bigger trade rumor was a first and Torrey Krug coming back for Sanheim and Hayes. Krug, of course, exercises his no trade. That doesn't happen. There's no first. There's no Sanheim going. It's just whatever the hell, the 6th rounder, and we're gonna pay basically to move on from Kevin Hayes. What did you think when this happened? Like, there's no way to know, like, oh, where did the leak come from? But a lot of people,
I can tell you where the leak came from. It came from St. Louis. It did not come from Philly.
That's pretty big considering what people thought at the time. Like, did Danny maybe get a little ahead of himself? Was this a misstep of
No. I mean,
GM?
eventually people in Philly would talk about it.
Yes.
But this all was coming out on the St. Louis side. I think the Flyers were legitimately frustrated that St. Louis couldn't keep their leaks plugged.
Which makes sense considering it was a guy on their side. Yeah. He was like, oh, no, not so fast. Yeah. You know, like, that only makes sense. But it ends up just being Hayes for the 6th rounder.
And in retrospect,
it was fine.
In retrospect, the Flyers maybe dodged a bullet here because Sanheim ends up, and look, he's got a lot more years left on his deal. It's possible at some point the Flyers will significantly regret having him under contract. At least now, we're feeling a lot better about Travis Sanheim as a long-term top 4 defenseman.
Do we maybe hold this evaluation against Danny Briere? Like, you were going to move this guy for Torrey Krug. Now, it was Torrey Krug in a first.
Right. Getting the first would have been huge.
Like, and one of the reasons Krug allegedly didn't waive is like, okay, we're not going to flip you right away, but there ain't no guarantee we don't flip you at the deadline or something. Yeah. And he didn't want to be traded twice, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Is that all? Like, how do we come to grips with Sanheim having the best year of his career and wanting to move on for him? It is like, even with Sanheim having the great season, you look at that contract and go, this doesn't really line up with the rebuild.
It really doesn't. That's kind of where I'm at. There are 2 reasons why I don't give Danny shit about, like, almost moving on from Sanheim, and then Sanheim has the bounce back year and say, well, he got saved by his own good luck. Number one, I do think trading Sanheim, with the information that he had at the time, trying to trade Travis Sanheim before the no-trade clause kicked in on July 1st, was the right rebuild-centric move. Because I will always say that when you're evaluating trades, when you're evaluating GMs, like, it's all about possible outcomes. The outcome we got with Travis Sanheim this year, where he patched things up with John Tortorella, he has the bounce-back season, he's looking good again, I think there was probably about like a 20% chance that was going to happen.
I did not believe in this sort of thing happening.
Yeah. Now, it happened, and that's great.
Yeah.
But I don't think Briere was wrong to view it as unlikely. Obviously, then they were stuck because they couldn't work out a deal. No one was willing to offer them anything really for Sanheim that wasn't involved in this bigger deal. So then it was like, okay, well, I guess we got to cross our fingers and hope we get the 20% option. And they did, and that's great. But I don't think Danny was wrong for evaluating what ultimately played out to be something that probably wasn't intelligent to bet on. Secondly, and I think this is another important aspect of it, I'm not sure if Travis Sanheim has the year he had this year if they don't almost trade him. Because I do think that Sanheim, he's a guy with a good work ethic, don't get me wrong. But when you almost get moved, when your team is this close, and Sanheim very much knew, like we talked to him at the start of training camp, like he knew that he almost got traded. This was not just bullshit rumors.
This was not.
When that almost happens, it does give you that little bit of extra motivation to prove everybody wrong and to say, you know, I want to be here. And I'm glad I'm still here, but I clearly need to convince people in the organization that I should still be here because they were ready to trade me. I don't know if he attacks the offseason with the same kind of vigor that he obviously did. I mean, he came to camp and he was friggin' jacked. And you're like, shit, this is the same dude from last year. I don't know if he does it that hard. He still works hard. I don't know if he works that hard. If he doesn't almost get traded at the end of June.
No, it's it working out for them and the motivation of like, you didn't know any of this was going to happen. It's lucky it did. I still wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be all that broken up if they figured out a way to move on from Travis Sanheim at this point. Yeah. But
no, the contract is still concerning with the timeline of the rebuild, to be sure.
But it's hard to hold the whole thing against him when it was like, all right, we have this thing on the table, and one of those guys said no, and okay. And you end up, okay, we moved on from Kevin Hayes, and it's really kind of painless.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. At the very least, this trade doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
you know?
I'd agree.
Then we go to draft day, and the one trade he made, they didn't have a second-round pick, I believe, and they select Carson Bjarnason. They sent a 6th rounder and 2024 second to Tampa to get a second-round pick last year.
Right.
They traded their initial second-round pick in the Risto deal.
Right.
He's the 4th goalie selected, I believe. They believe in this guy. They like him. They take him. They move up to get their guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a normal draft day trade. The value is, generally speaking, fine. In retrospect, it was very clear that they in part did this because they wanted to beef up their goalie prospect pool, because they had a suspicion that Carter Hart may have done something really, really bad and might not be in the future anymore. This is just a run-of-the-mill, perfectly fine, go get your guy draft day trade.
Yeah, they had him targeted. They went and got him. Good for him. Yep. We go to August 5th, 2023. They trade David Koch's rights to Carolina for Massimo Rizzo and a 2025 5th. This is basically they traded. They traded Tony DeAngelo.
This was the Tony DeAngelo trade.
The league stepped in and decided to enforce one of its rules for once and said you can't trade a guy back in less than a year, so you have to wait. And by the time they did all that, it was like, stupid. Let's just buy out Tony D. And eventually, the Carolina was like, yeah, we'll still make this trade, whatever, because they signed Tony DeAngelo. It's a whole. But at the end of the day, they gave up nothing and got Massimo Rizzo, and a 2025 5th for nothing.
I think this is low-key one of Danny's better deals because, like, I very much am looking at this as this is a Tony DeAngelo trade. Yes. I know. As it is right here,
that's what it is.
It's technically the rights to David Koch, but no, this is the Tony DeAngelo trade. So I'm happy with this trade on 2 levels. Number one, Tony DeAngelo stinks. He's not good. Like he's.
Did you hear what Rob Brendamore said about
No, what did Rob say?
The other day when they had to, someone got hurt or something, they had to scratch. I don't remember but it was like, yeah. Then Tony DeAngelo steps in, and we know what he is.
Yeah. Yikes.
He's ineffective, and then he was like, "Well, yeah."
I mean, DeAngelo's on an incredibly cheap contract. Yes. They waived him near the deadline, and nobody picked him up. Yeah. This is not someone who the entire league views as a good player.
No.
Is Massimo Rizzo a great prospect? I don't think so. But he scores a lot in college. He's gonna have a chance. He is a worthwhile prospect. To get a worthwhile prospect back for Tony DeAngelo, who stinks, that's a great trade. And then the second reason I like it is because, again, it speaks to the creativity. The NHL says, no, you can't do this trade. Danny has the creativity and the connections in the league to work out which was very clearly a workaround with Carolina, where they still get the guy they had agreed to, and all they have to do is kind of backdoor it in a weird way. I don't know if Chuck Fletcher figures that out.
No. And maybe this is another kind of lucking into a circumstance because Noah Cates files for arbitration, which opens up another buyout window for you. But whatever, you took advantage of the situation.
Exactly.
And even though you were shut down in your initial attempt, you still end up getting, like you said, a worthwhile prospect. We'll see what Massimo Rizzo is. It's a guy.
He's not a nobody. He's a guy with a shot.
He has
a chance.
He has worked his way up into someone we should pay attention to. I bet you we say his name a bunch more this summer.
I would agree.
And into next year, and a 5th round pick, which could be something.
And you got him for a guy who couldn't get along with the head coach and had such a bad year this year that he's not even in Carolina's lineup, got waived and no one claimed him.
The one team that valued him is like, oh, fuck, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
So
in my mind, this is low-key one of Danny's better moves on multiple levels.
Now we get to
the big one.
January 8th, 2024, They trade Cutter Gauthier to the Ducks for Jamie Drysdale and a 2025 second round pick. I think, I mean, it'll take forever to figure out what Jamie Drysdale is and if this was the move. They targeted a guy. Clearly, they really like this one player.
Yes.
There were other teams involved.
Yes.
And it got to,
Yeah,
we're choosing.
It just got rumored earlier. Well, not rumored. Michael Russo reported earlier this week that Minnesota was in on Gauthier, and they may or may not have offered Marco Rossi. So that gives you an idea of the types of guys that were being offered for Gauthier.
I have heard the Flyers called Montreal and asked about Arbor Jacki. He's a guy.
I mean,
I find him very entertaining.
I would much rather have Jamie Drysdale than a guy who just hits.
I have to believe that
I have to believe there was more.
I have to believe that there were other elements. You need to give us a first or something, you know. But that guy. But they end up with Jamie Drysdale. We'll see. He was a 6th overall pick in his draft year. It's not like he doesn't have the draft pedigree.
Yep.
But the thing that I find best about this deal. Man, hockey is a small world, and Elliot Friedman knows fucking everything. This didn't come out.
Yeah.
And they were told, 8-10 months prior to this? Like, nah, trade us. We ain't signing.
They did a really good job in this trade, not in this trade, but really in the negotiations, of leveraging their relationships to make sure that everybody kept this under wraps.
Yes.
Because the main reason why they wanted to keep it under wraps is they knew if it leaked, their leverage would go. It wouldn't be completely gone because teams would still want him, but it would certainly go down because there would no longer be the chance that Cutter Gauthier could ultimately change his mind and sign with Philly. Because as we saw in the reaction to the trade, Flyers fans, particularly the online ones, are fucking nuts. And they were going.
People went up there.
They were going to torture this kid once they found out he didn't want to be a Flyer. And then there was no chance that he would ever change his mind and decide, I want to be a Flyer, when he's got people in his DMs giving him death threats, when he's got people going up to Boston College to yell at him during games.
To Boston College.
Which is wild. But they knew that if it got out, there would be no, because that was the urgency on the part of the other teams. The urgency on the part of the other teams was, if we don't trade for him now, there's a chance that in a year he changes his mind, decides he's going to sign with Philly, and then we just don't get him. Then it's over because this guy who already changed his mind once might change his mind again. That was the urgency. If it leaks, that urgency is gone. The Flyers' leverage goes down. That's what they did well. Now, if this trade doesn't work, and I am not in any way, shape, or form ready to give up on Jamie Drysdale. I think it is way too early. I want to see what he looks like when he's healthy. I do not think that the fact that he's had 2 years of injuries means he's going to be injured for the rest of his career, which it seems like some people believe. I think that's insane. But if this trade fails, I don't think it is a failure of negotiation or a failure of, the relationship leveraging. It will be a failure of talent evaluation because they clearly think, the organization as a whole thinks, that Jamie Drysdale has high-end potential, that he can be one of those high-end talent guys that we've spent a year talking about. I don't know if they're right. I'm not ready to give up on Jamie Drysdale, but they might be wrong. And if they are wrong and Jamie Drysdale is either injured for the rest of his career or he's just a dude, and they could have gotten other guys like Marco Rossi who might be better than just a dude, then it's going to look very bad in retrospect. I am certainly not ready to say this is a bad trade yet, but if it does turn out to be a bad trade, I don't think it's not going to be that they panicked and they traded Gauthier too soon. It's going to be because they overrated Jamie Drysdale. Their scouts and everybody watching tape overrated Jamie Drysdale. We'll see how it plays out.
Should they have called his bluff? All right, go to college for 4 years.
I do not think that was an option because the only way that might have worked is if you were confident you could keep us under wraps for 2 more years. And I can tell you right now, it was not going to be kept under wrap for 2 more years.
That's
I'm not going to reveal my source, but about 4 hours before the trade happened, I got a message from one of my sources saying, yo, Gauthier refused to meet with anybody at World Juniors. It's bad.
And that was right when they got back. This happened January 8th.
Yep.
They went and made a last-ditch effort, and he was like, no.
Like, I was it was a game day. So my thought process was tomorrow I will start pulling on some sources and to see if I can confirm this so then I can report it. I never got the chance because they traded him in the middle of the fucking game.
The game that never happened.
Yes.
The tree fall in the woods game.
But like, if I was getting those things, whether it was going to be me or whether it was going to be one of the other many reporters covering the Flyers or national reporters, this was coming out. And once that came out, then there was no friggin' way he was ever going to report to the Flyers because the reaction from the fans would have completely set that bridge on fire, nuked it, and had it fall into the Atlantic Ocean.
So that's the Cutter Gauthier situation. I think the best. Hopefully, Jamie Drysdale turns out. Like I've said, when we talked to Jonesy shortly after the trade, we said, you have two big holes in the organizational depth chart, 1D and 1C. Do you feel as if you kind of filled one of them? And he said, yeah, our like biggest effort now is going to go to fill the 1C role because we think we at least have somebody who kind of fits the bill of what we're looking for as that top pair defenseman. We'll see how that works out. But I think the biggest triumph is keeping this thing under wraps, especially after now you said the leak in the St. Louis thing came from St. Louis. But there was that, oh man, was this kind of an issue on the Flyers side being a first time? Like the president's brand new, the GM's brand new. Well, it turns out if they need to keep things under wraps, they're pretty good at it.
Yeah. They show that also in the Fedotov thing.
And that happens with Fedotov.
We'll get to that in a bit.
We do have a super chat. We have the super chat from K-Red. Let's see what he has to say. Should we have just given Cutter his free year? Would it have mattered?
So that's something that has been, I feel like it's been repeated.
I don't think that's what it was.
It's been repeated so much that
people believe it.
People believe it. It is certainly not that simple, at least based on the conversations I've had with people in the organization. My understanding is that had Gauthier, because we're going back to the call they had in March, that apparently last March, that apparently the call between Danny Briere, who had just been named interim GM, and Cutter Gauthier, whose season had just ended. They had a call. I have heard from people I trust that Gauthier came away from that call concerned. Now, what he was concerned about, he will not reveal. Maybe he will at some point down the road. But he came away from that call thinking, I'm not loving this.
They told him the place is a shit show.
The theory that has been brought up by a few people is that Gauthier wanted to turn pro immediately. The Flyers told him no because there are cap things and whatnot. That was reported. I don't even know by who, but that was reported by some people. And it's been said so many times that people just assume it was fact. My understanding is that if Cutter Gauthier would have came into that call and said, I want to turn pro right now and I want to burn a year and that's what I want, the Flyers have been like, abso-fucking-lutely, we want you in the organization, sign now. This was not a situation where the Flyers told him, no, you can't sign now unless multiple people in the organization are lying to me. What I do suspect might have happened is, because what Flyers people have told me is, look, Cutter came into that call and he was like, my coach thinks I should go back for another year.
BC made the, yo, man, we can win a championship. Yep. We need you. We're getting all these guys if it's you. And all the USNTDP people, like, we can win the title. They made the hard sell, and the Flyers did.
You had Patrick Brown's uncle, basically, who's the coach of friggin' BC, basically was like, I think not just we want to win a championship, but also I think you would benefit from another year. And Gauthier came into that call, at least from the Flyers' perspective, seeming like he was leaning in that direction, that like, I think I'm going to go back. I think I want to. And Briere apparently basically was like, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. Like we support that. We're cool with that. You'll benefit from another year. Sure. I wonder if
he wanted them to beg him.
He wanted them to beg him.
Yes.
And when they didn't, it then became like, these guys don't love me as much as they should. Yes. That's what that's what I think happened. If I had to guess.
Like, from everything that I've been able to piece together about this, and you are the journalist and I'm some guy, but that's what happened.
I think he wanted them to beg him. And then he still was feeling relatively okay about the whole thing. Maybe I do need another year. And then he goes over to the Worlds and he kicks ass against pros. And then it became, well, these fucking guys, like, they don't think I'm ready. Look what I just did. Fuck this organization.
I also think there was some conversation about, okay, and then next season, which is the season that just passed, like your options. It's like, hey man, even we're gonna give you every chance in camp, and if you don't make it right away, maybe you start with the Phantoms, and we can always bring you up whenever. And he's sitting there, interprets that as they want me to play in the fucking AHL after I just dominated the world. Like, I do think there was some misinterpretation on both sides, like on what, like, he's coming in and saying maybe he wants to stay in college. They're like, all right, man, if that's what you want to do, we're cool. We're not going to like force your hand to try to influence your decision at all. Like, if that's what you want to do. And he wanted the hard sell that he got from BC. This is, and again, I could be wrong, but this is basically what I've pieced together.
It seems like the most likely scenario. The way I've heard it, the way I've heard that phone call and that like communication described by one source that I really trust is, it was basically a game of telephone where one side thought they were saying one thing, the other side thought they were saying another thing, and the miscommunication just spiraled out of control. So, K-Red, to answer your question, sort of, but not the way you're saying it. I don't think this is a situation where the Flyers straight up told Cutter, we're not going to sign you right now.
Because of bonus overages.
Yes, like that's insane.
That's not what happened.
And I don't think that anybody should assume that like Briere fucked it up that bad. If there was a mistake made, it was Briere underestimated just how much Cutter needed his ego suit.
And the Flyers weren't like maybe making the hard sell because they were like, our fucking room is an embarrassment right now, and we don't want like you to be the next Mike Richards.
Well, see, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about their entire organization was on fire.
That's everything.
Danny was a week and a half into taking over as GM.
Danny's not the actual GM. I mean, he was, but like not really. You know, he's the interim still at that point. All right, we're way behind, so I got to catch up here.
Hey,
let's talk about Olipop, baby. Olipop is the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefit of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. Olipop's a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar per can, plus 9 grams of fiber per can. 2 out of every 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both of these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. It's really freaking tasty, and it's got this prebiotic fiber. What is that? It's the food source for the beneficial probiotic bacteria in your gut. Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. And it's available online at drinkolipop.com, as well as in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at Wawa. And I've told you a bunch of times, one of the flavors at Wawa, the strawberry vanilla, mix that with some tequila. Oh, you're living life, man. That's a summer that can't go wrong. So
that's a very good summer drink.
It was tremendous. So use code PHLY20 for 20% off your next order of Olipop at drinkolipop.com. You can also get it on Amazon and in those 30,000 retailers, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. But, drinkolipop.com, promo code PHLY20. Get that 20% off, man. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? All right, let's go to the trade deadline now. Some trades. Sean Walker and a 2026 fifth for a 2025 first. And the contract of Ryan Johansson.
Love this trade.
They got what they needed to get to justify doing what they had to do.
Yes.
It all worked. And really, when you look at it as an extension of the Ivan Provorov trade, man, this is some good shit.
It's some really, really good asset management. Look, it's not ideal that they may have Ryan Johansson on long-term injured reserve for the next year. It's not great. It's not the worst thing.
Also, who cares?
It's not going to kill them. You got a first-round pick for a guy who was a cap dump less than a year before. But it's not even just the value aspect of it that makes me like this trade so much. It's the fact that this trade shows that Danny Briere is truly committed to the rebuild, because it would have been very, very easy for him. He's the general manager of a team that's exceeding expectations, that's in a playoff spot, that had been in a playoff spot for months. It would have been very easy for him to get up in front of us in Florida and just be like, couldn't do it. Fuck the rebuild. We're going for the playoffs. We're the Flyers. That's what we do. Instead, he purposely weakens the defense core that, by the way, had just lost all of Drysdale, Risto, and Nick Seeler.
Especially considering everything that happened right
Yep.
at this
Yep.
time.
It makes me confident that he has the mental fortitude to actually stick with this and not just be distracted by the short-term reward, which would have been, and I've said this during the season, I will say it straight up right now. I think if they don't make this trade, I think the Flyers are in the playoffs. I think they make the playoffs if they have Sean
Probably.
Walker. I think they get bulldozed in the first round. But I think right now we are probably talking about the Flyers down 2-0 to the Rangers.
How bad are the Capitals? They fucking stink.
But my point
Yes,
being
yes.
is that I think this trade sacrificed a playoff, a playoff berth, not a playoff run, but a playoff berth. I like this trade because I think it was still the right move.
But hey, like, while I agree in all likelihood they get bulldozed because that's what happens, Sam Emerson seems like he found a second wind. A couple of guys, like, anything can happen when you, but in all likelihood, no. Like John Tortorella said, I don't know if we do anything, but we get
like,
in.
yeah, we probably would have got
Would have
killed.
been nice to get in.
Would have been cool to be there.
Yeah, like, no, it's the optics of it, and one, he did whatever he could to get that first round pick, and two, he told you the rebuild matters.
Yeah.
And both of those things are absolutely huge. He's taking the long-term look rather than the short-term. And listen, whether you're planning to go to a game in the long-term or near-term, you got to use GameTime to get them tickets, baby, because GameTime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. They have the killer last-minute deals, the all-in pricing, seat view, which is absolutely huge, especially maybe you're going on a little trip this summer, want to see some ballparks maybe. You don't know these other stadiums. Well, you use GameTime, use a seat view, you know exactly the kind of view you're going to have, not to mention the lowest price guarantee. GameTime, just plain and simple, takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets or any tickets. You know about the last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the flash deals, save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
I think this might have to be a little bit longer of a show.
It's going to have to go.
It's going to have to go over a bit. So strap in. We're going over an hour.
Like the other stuff isn't that crazy. Like the last trade that we're doing, the last trades are the two nonsense trades on deadline day. Traded a fourth to Buffalo for Eric Johnson because they were out of dudes, as we said, and then moved Sean Walker just to make sure they had no guys. So they bring in Eric Johnson as a little bit of veteran help. That's whatever. He actually wasn't horrible the whole time.
So here's this. Actually, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. This is a trade that I legitimately dislike.
Really?
And this trade raises some concerns to me about Danny. Number one, I think a fourth round pick for Eric Johnson is way too much. He's not very good. I loved interviewing him. Great guy. Like, for me, it was great. I got a really good interview for a month. He's not very good anymore. The Flyers at 5-on-5 with him on the ice after the trade were outscored 16-7. Did not help the team. And granted, part of that's goaltending. But him being on the ice did not help the team.
No.
They overpaid probably for him in terms of actual projected value. But more importantly, they had younger defensemen who they could have played. Like guys like Adert and Jennings could have gotten in more games down the stretch, and I don't think would have been measurably worse than Eric Johnson actually provided. Now, do I understand the just get a body, make the boys feel like you're not completely selling them down the river? I get it. I do worry, though, that this could bode poorly for, one concern I do have with this rebuild is Danny going to get too many underwhelming vets to block kids? This was blocking a kid, at least one. It's a concern because, look, they made it clear they're not going to block Tyson Forrester, but they're going to have to be making decisions on Ronnie Adder and Adam Jennings soon in terms of waivers and whatnot. You could have gotten a longer look at one of those guys had you not traded for Eric Johnson, because you would have forced the coach to play those guys more by him just not having any other options.
I think that's another end of this, though. A fourth, maybe it's too much for Eric Johnson. That doesn't bother me a ton. But if they bring him in and he's just a body, but say another injury happens or Jennings or Adder just straight stink, having him as a body that maybe doesn't get in. And he was in the lineup like every night. That's wrong.
He plays 17 games.
That's a difference between.
But you got to know the coach you have.
That's true. That's a fair point.
This is a trade that
and Victor Mete and Louis Belpedio were not bad in their call-ups.
Like it's not like a screaming red flag of, oh my God, fire Danny. But I disagree with the move at the time it happened, and seeing how it played out, I just think it's a bit concerning, because I think if this rebuild is going to work, they're going to have to give bottom half of the lineup
eventually
guys
you
opportunities,
just give them the chance,
and you can't block them with Eric Johnson's.
And we did say a couple days ago, you're like, well, maybe there's a signing in the vein of Mark Stahl. Why are we going to do that again in another season where it's like the results don't really matter?
It's a reasonable point.
So I like, it's not the best move. I just don't think it really matters. But no, it's not like, oh, he won this one. No. And then the Wade Allison for Dennis Gurianov.
That trade to me is irrelevant.
Who cares?
Like, maybe if you really want to get critical, you could maybe say that the Flyers could have handled Wade Allison better. But given the situation, like, whatever, he had no future in the organization. Gurianov, you took a shot in the dark that maybe he could be the next Ville Leno. He ain't. He's going back to Russia. Whatever. Nothing trade.
And like, Nashville's in the playoffs. Have you heard Wade Allison's name yet? I haven't.
Is he even a black ace?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now we go to the draft. He's only had the one draft. Michkov and Bonk in the first round. Bjarnason in the second. Zavragin and Denver Barkey in the third. Cole Knuble and Al Ciernik in the fourth. Carter Southern in the fifth. McPherson in the sixth. Mateo Mann in the seventh.
I like the
we really have liked the draft.
I like the vast majority of this draft. I mean, Michkov pick, slam dunk. Whether it works or it doesn't, 100% the right pick. Love the Barkey pick. Love the Chernik pick. Bjarnason, Zavragin, sure. Zavragin looks great in Russia. Granted, he's ways away, but he looks like a legitimate, like, really good goalie prospect, potentially. I understand the consternation about Bonk over Perreault. I get it.
I don't.
However, Bonk had a real freaking good year this year. So while Perreault might have been the better pick, and we'll see how it plays out. He's still young. Maybe he scored a ton of points for BC, to be sure. We'll see how his game translates. This might ultimately be something like, for example, yes, you could look at a draft and say that this was the better pick or the best pick, but if you get a really high-quality NHL player, I'm not going to kill you for it. Like, it's the idea of, I'm not going to kill the Flyers for taking Travis Sanheim over David Pastrnak. Was Pastrnak the better pick? Sure. Like, that was the better pick. That was the best pick. Travis Sanheim's a damn good defenseman, and you got a quality top four defenseman out of a mid-first round pick. If Oliver Bonk is a quality top four defenseman for a decade, like, yeah, the pro would maybe, again, we're assuming, maybe Perreault will have been better over the long term. It's not like it appears they picked a guy who's likely to be a bust.
I think knowing what we know now, the pick makes a ton more sense. Where'd you say Gabe Perreault went to college?
Boston College.
Well,
Cutter Gauthier.
I'm good on that locker room right now.
Fair enough.
I just don't see how that would possibly work.
On the whole, I like the approach of this draft. I don't have a major problem with the Oliver Bonk pick, especially given how he developed this year and the fact that Jonesy has a great relationship with Dale Hunter over in London, so they're going to have not control, but just trust. They trust that Bonk and Barkey are going to be developed well. I like the Zavragin pick. The Cole Knuble pick, whatever, but he had a strong second half in his freshman year in college, so maybe he can be a quality 4C. Southern, I thought, was a good late-round swing. Raw, right-handed shooting defenseman. Sure, give it a go.
Why not?
On the whole, I really like this draft. Could you quibble with a pick here and there? Maybe. On the whole, very satisfied with year one. The drafting acumen and drafting philosophy that Danny Briere showed.
We still have to get to the contracts that he has signed in his tenure, but of these three, trades, contracts, and draft, would you say the thing that you're like, the thing Danny has done best so far is the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
I am most, and luckily that's the most important part of a rebuild.
It certainly is.
So
now we get to the contracts. The first day, July 1st of free agency last year, he signs Garnett Hathaway to a 2-year deal, with a $2.375 million AAV, and signed Ryan Poehling to a 1-year, $1.4 million UFA deal. He then extended Ryan Poehling in January for 2 more years with a 1.9 AAV, just as the two main free agent signings last season. I think he knocked these out of the park. I mean, Garnett Hathaway is exactly the guy you want playing on a fourth line.
Yeah.
He definitely helps with the culture of this team. He plays the way they want dudes to play. From a personal standpoint, I want to be entertained for 82 games. He certainly contributed there. And Ryan Poehling, you might have found a little something extra here with Ryan Poehling, and then you sign him to that extension. It's $1.9 million. Like, all right, cool.
I think these are, I don't think either is a home run, but I think these are both solid doubles. I think Hathaway, number one, he just improved our general enjoyment of the season.
Thank you
which,
for that.
like, hey, we got to watch the game.
Joke.
So thank you, Garnett. I also think Garnett Hathaway has helped a lot with the culture. I do think that he's helped with the room.
He's been on winning teams.
Yeah, he's a steadying guy in the room. He's an intelligent guy. He obviously brings that fire on the ice that kind of drags people into the fight. For the price they got him for and the term they got him for, very, very solid signing. Poehling is even better than that.
Yeah.
Because this is a guy who, like, look, I don't think he's ever going to cost all that much money, but I think he's a guy where if he's in your bottom 6 and you're a contender, he's a darn good player. Now, if you're giving him 20 minutes a night because you got no other centers, that's real bad. But if he's in your bottom 6 where he's like usually a fourth liner but can play on the third line sometimes too, I think that's great. He brings speed. He fits the style of play they want to play. He's not old, so he could be part of this as a depth guy in 3, 4, 5 years. And we'll see if this is how it plays out ultimately. I think his emergence does make Scott Laughton more expendable.
That's a big part of it for me is I believe if anyone gets traded this offseason, the most likely candidate is Scott Laughton. I kind of expect him to be, and Ryan Poehling is one of the reasons why now. It's not just like, yeah, if someone gives us a great offer, it's like if we can get fair value for Scott Laughton, why wouldn't we do this? We need to open up roster spots. He's of the age now where he doesn't fit the timeline anymore. Obviously, he has value around the league, and we have a guy who basically is him. Not the same offensive production, probably.
They've really got 2 guys in Poehling and Noah Cates.
Yes.
Who are more or less Scott. I love Scott Laughton. I will not be crying if they keep him because I really enjoy covering him and he's a good player. But from a pure roster construction standpoint, you do have 2 guys in Poehling and Cates who are filling that same role and are younger than Laughton.
Yes.
It would make sense if you get a good offer to move on from Laughton.
On the 3rd day of free agency, they signed Mark Stahl for 1 year, $1.1 million, and the consternation at the time was fucking Torts is going to play this guy every night. And to his credit, he didn't. And I think that made it a good signing.
Mark Stahl got ultimately 35 games out of 82, which is probably about 30 fewer than I thought he was going to get.
Yes.
Look, I know there's a lot of Mark Stahl hate. I know that for some people, Mark Stahl playing in 1 game was 1 game too many. I think he was mostly fine in what they promised us he was going to be a 7. He was deployed like a 7.
When they were playing 7 guys, he played like 9 minutes a night.
I think, if anything, this does make me feel better about the Danny Torts combo because my big fear with the Stahl signing was that, oh my God, they got this guy. He's going to play in 82. He's going to play in 82 games. Would I have personally signed Mark Stahl? Probably not. But it shows that they can sign a guy like Mark Stahl and not overuse him.
Kind of the opposite of the Eric Johnson move, where it was like, okay, yeah, if you get him and he doesn't play, that's cool.
Yeah. And
he played every game. It's like, well, yeah, Mark Stahl did. He played exactly the role we expected him to play. That's fine.
I was afraid Mark Stahl was going to be Torts' Chris Vandevelde.
Yes.
It turned out that they played Mark Stahl about as much as we would want them to play an underwhelming number 7 who's mostly there for locker room, help of the kids.
Later in the summer, Noah Cates signed following an arbitration following 2 years, 2.625. Is that the AAV?
That's the AAV.
Okay, yeah. I think most notably that opened up the Tony D buyout window. But he got Tony. I mean, it's an arbitration file.
I will do a little mea culpa here on this one. I wanted them to try to go long term with Noah Cates. knowing what we know now about his inability to take a step forward offensively, it seems like it was the right move to bridge him. Because if he never takes that step forward, even after a bridge deal, he's probably going to sign a deal at a similar AAV to this one. So no reason to give him 4 over 6 or 7 when you can continue to get him for under 4 even after a bridge deal. In retrospect, I was wrong on this one. Danny looks like he was right to go bridge with Noah Cates.
This is an underrated move. At the beginning of August, he extends Sam Erson's contract for 2 more years at a $1.45 million average annual value that begins this season.
This was
this coming season, 2024-25.
This was the Carter Hart's getting arrested move.
And in retrospect now, like we've talked to Fedotov contract to death already. Yes, it's an overpay. Also, for their 2 goalies
this
combined,
is an underpay.
Like for their 2 goalies combined, you're under $5 million.
Yeah.
So like, does it really matter?
Somebody DM'd me that yesterday, basically like making that point that, well, you're underpaying on Erson, so it all evens out. I don't love that thinking because like just because you're underpaying on one guy doesn't mean you have to.
You can
overpay.
always underpay both.
Yeah, you can underpay both, and you have even more cap space.
Yeah.
But it is fair to say
when you look at them as a tandem.
I think I like this signing a lot because it showed foresight on Danny's part, not just in terms of the Hart situation, because like, look, I don't want to praise anybody for that situation because it was just awful all around. But it shows foresight from Danny's perspective that, hey, we have a goalie in Erson who we think is pretty good. And if he's willing to sign a cheap-ass deal for 2 years that kicks in next season, now, before we may have to play him a lot because our goalie might get arrested for sexual assault, yeah, let's get that deal done friggin' now before, because, like, had they waited, I mean, yeah, I know his overall numbers aren't looking that great.
But he just started 50 games.
Yeah, he's going to be in line for a hell of a lot more than 1.5 mil had they waited until the summer to sign it.
I don't care what his numbers are. You start 50 games, you get a big fucking raise.
Yes, you're getting it. He's getting at least what Fedotov got.
Yes,
as an AAV.
Absolutely.
Instead, you got him for cheaper because you bet on the idea that he is a legitimate NHL goalie. And he showed this year, if anything else, he's a legitimate NHL goalie. He's a legitimate NHL goalie. He's now signed to a cheap deal. I think this was a move that speaks well to Danny Briere's process, and I dig it.
Even aside from planning ahead for the Carter Hart situation, like I said, Fedotov at this point seems like a lost cause, and Felix Sandstrom's contract was up at the end of the season. So goalie depth depleted, even if Hart, nothing ever happens. There's no goalie depth in the system.
Going to be a hell of a backup.
You have Cal Peterson, who stinks, and you relegated to the AHL.
Yeah.
Like, so it's Erson. So I do like this one.
I kind of forgot about that move, but I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I liked it at the time. I really like it now, knowing what we know about the Hart situation.
Morgan Frost signed as an RFA 2 years, $4.2 million. This didn't get, so 2.1 AAV,
right.
Excuse me.
Right.
This didn't get done until September the 6th.
Yeah. Frost wanted
this
more.
took a while.
Frost wanted more, and I think eventually Frost basically just said, "I don't want to miss camp time, so I'm going to sign."
They waited him out, and it worked.
It worked. Yeah.
Listen, do you want to do that with everyone? No, but Morgan Frost knows it's not as if he had the longest leash.
Yes.
He didn't. He signed to not miss camp time, so he wouldn't put himself in the doghouse.
And he ended up in the doghouse anyway.
Still was scratched 10 times between the beginning of the season and like January 8th or whatever the hell it was. So no problem with this one. $2.1 million for your de facto 1C at this point.
I think the only criticism you can make here, and this really just depends on your view of Frost, is while I said I was wrong to want Noah Cates side of the long-term deal, maybe Morgan Frost, given the fact that he did step up in the second half, he looks like he's a point producer. He's a guy where, and I don't even know if the Flyers are going to be the team that gives him this deal, but he's a guy where after this bridge deal is done, he will get a big raise. Not like an enormous raise. I don't think he's going to be at like $7 million or anything, but like, you know, he put up some points this year.
But he's a 40-point guy.
He's probably going to put up some points next year. He's going to get significantly more money than around $2 million, especially with the cap going up. This maybe would have been an opportunity to get some savings. However, given the situation with him and Torts, given the fact that you're unsure if he's really part of the future, I don't think it was wrong for the Flyers to sign into a bridge deal not knowing how it's going to work out in Philly. But I'm open to the argument that if Morgan Frost, against all odds, spends his entire career in Philadelphia, I could see in 8 years us looking back and saying, well, they could have saved more money if they would have just signed to a 6-7 year deal back in 2023. I could see that plausibly happening.
I guess. I can also just like, I still don't know if I believe in Morgan Frost. Like,
Fair.
you know, like I've watched him 2 full years now. He's put up 40 points in each, and I'm like, he's good.
He's okay.
Now we get to the 2 mid-year extensions. Owen Tippett's happened in January. 8 years, 6.2 AAV. 4 years in the middle. He has 10, so the first 2-0, last 2-0. The 4 in the middle, he has a 10 team no trade list.
Sure, Owen. Why not?
Yeah, whatever.
Why not, Owen?
And then, like, hopefully we're not moving guys at that point. You know, hopefully we're bringing guys in and not moving guys out 3-4 years from now.
Yeah.
And then the Nick Seeler one in March, 4 years, 2.7 mil AAV, no trade in the first 2. Again, they want him here for culture for these next couple of years, so it makes sense that they're not going to trade him.
Yeah.
I compared earlier Tippett's extension, 6.2 over 8 years, to the 5 year, 7 mil AAV that JVR got, like as a UFA in his prime, or just maybe exiting the prime. Don't have a problem with it. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a fine
I don't think
deal.
it's a great deal for the Flyers. I don't think Owen Tippett got massively overpaid. It's not like 7.5. I think it's right. Like both sides maybe feel like they left something on the table, and that's a good negotiation usually.
I think that this is a deal with upside because
Yes.
I don't think people and
It's a
like
little risk.
and like I don't even fully understand this because you don't fully understand how your perception is going to change in a few years. But I don't think people fully understand how differently they are going to be perceiving cap hits in 2-3 years
Yes.
when the cap ceiling skyrockets and you're seeing guys getting $14 million cap hits. Like that's going to happen. It's been a while since the cap has gone up dramatically, which has colored all of our views of contracts. In the next 2-3 years, the cap is just going to keep going up and up and up, and suddenly,
and then there's a new CBA, and we're going to have to cut the roster in half.
I don't think that's
hopefully this doesn't happen.
I think in 3-4 years, a $6 million cap hit is not going to look daunting at all. I really don't. Now, for this deal to be legitimately good for the Flyers, Tippett has to take a step forward.
He needs to not.
He can't just be a 28, 29 goal a year guy. He needs to be a 35, 40 goal a year guy. I think he's got the talent. Will he ever have the consistency? I don't know. I look at this deal that I think most likely we will look at it as a fine, perfectly fine deal, but I do think there is upside for it to look like a great deal. It's just I'm not ready to say that because I'm not sure if Owen Tippett's going to take another step. I don't know.
Also, and this is like, he personally needs to be more consistent. Also, he is a goal-scoring winger on a team with no centers. Hard to like really evaluate a guy in that situation.
It's a fair point.
He needs to be better than he is.
If you get a Trevor Zegras, does Owen
Does
Tippett
he all of a sudden become 35?
And if you get a Matvei Michkov and then the power play gets better, is he then a 35, 40 goal scorer? Sure, might be.
He scored 27 and 28 on a team that has like an historically bad power play those 2 years. So, and then the Nick Seeler extension, we've been over this plenty.
Probably a year too many, but they
1
really
year
like
too
him.
many. I would love
really
not
like
to be
him.
paying him any money, but like, I really like him too.
I think in terms of sheer value, I think this is a good deal in that I think right now Nick Seeler provides significantly more on ice value. Not even talking about like the value internally, the locker room stuff. I think he provides significantly more on ice value than a sub $3 million a year cap hit. That's what all of the statistical models say. That's what my eye test says. Should the Flyers have been the ones to give him that deal? Maybe they would have benefited from trading him for an asset, but I don't think you would have gotten a first-round pick back for him anyway. I'm generally speaking fine with this contract.
Yeah, that's fine is how I look at the Sealer thing. And then the last thing is the entire Fedotov saga, bringing him over on his told contract. He plays a little. Who's to say what those games even were? And then the extension, 2 years, $3.275 million AAV.
We've rehashed that enough this week.
We're good. I just, like I said earlier, I think the most important part of all of this is ain't no one knew it was happening.
Yeah.
Like this is a leak-proof front office, it appears.
I think the most important part of it is it shows that Danny and the front office has the ability to navigate the Russian waters and get guys over here.
That's a huge thing.
Because, look, Fedotov could be a decent goalie for a while. I don't think anybody expects him to be a game changer. Matvei Michkov is a game changer, and this shows that they can navigate the sometimes precarious waters of Putin's Russia and get guys out.
13 months on the job. B+?
Yeah, B. I mean, I'm in that B range.
B?
I think B. I actually feel better. I wasn't sure if I was going to feel better or worse after going through every single one.
I thought when we went through every move, I was going to C+. But no, I'm about where I was when we
I think I feel a little bit better. There were some moves like the Ersson move that I like more looking at it with fresh eyes than I even did at the time. Yeah, I think solid B range for Danny. I think he's off to a solid start.
Solid.
There are some concerns I have. I noted about the Erik Johnson thing. I'm a little bit concerned about blocking out some of the not the high end prospects, but some of the lower end guys. That said, they did show with someone like Zamula that they are willing to give a long look to and, stick him on the roster. I have some concerns, but on the whole, I think Danny's done a pretty good job.
Yeah. Obviously, first year on the job, room for improvement. Grading on the scale, grading on the curve of previous regime or regimes. Really, really good, but overall, fine. I have no complaints. Like, maybe there's some things he could do better, but like in terms of, man, I just got to get this off my chest about this fucking guy. Like, I don't have that right now.
Yeah, not yet.
Like, I'm not opening the thesaurus before shows to come up with synonyms for moron, as I was under the previous general manager. And I think that's a great improvement.
I would say the two biggest potential red flags I see with Danny are, number one, my concern about blocking some of the kids. Number two, and this is something very much that remains to be seen, but it is out there primarily because of the Drysdale-Gauthier trade. I do worry a little bit that
high-end evaluation.
My view of who high-end players are might differ from his view of who high-end players are.
It's something that we won't know for a while. Like,
exactly. At
least in the immediate future, we won't know. That's something that has to play out.
Have to wait and see.
All right, before we get out of here today, there's one more thing I got to tell you about. You got to come party with the PHLY Sixers crew. Yeah, you got to come on out for the live watch party and show at the Wicked Wolf on Sunday, April 28th at noon for the Sixers and Knicks game. It is presented by who better than our friends at Coors Light?
Is this game 4?
It'll be game 4. Yeah, you can join.
So it'll either be a really, really exciting game or an Irish wake for their season.
One or the other. Either way, you're going to want to have some ice-cold Coors Lights. Come out to the Wicked Wolf. You can join Devon Givens, the PHLY crew, and special guests for an epic Sixers playoff watch party and live show at Wicked Wolf on Chestnut. Coors Light will be offering $4 Coors cans during the game. PHLY will be raffling off PHLY swag during the event. RSVP for free to enter to win at allphly.com. Make sure you come on out and support us. It would mean a lot. All right, that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, subscribe everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, wherever. Podcasts, too. Follow the podcast.
Everything.
Right, that's it. All the places.
All the places.
My name is Bill Matz. For Charlie O'Connor, we will be back tomorrow. Happy Friday, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.